Great morning, world. Great morning, humans. And welcome to another edition of Make Sense Mondays. This guy just keeps coming back. I don't know how long you've been aware of this Make Sense Mondays gig and the Make Sense podcast with me, the Dragon, Dr. JC, but it's been going on for some amount of years. So if anybody's interested, I've got some interesting data on what happens when you legitimately commit to something and never quit. Fascinating idea to do that, right? So in any case, great morning, everybody. Very, very excited to be with you today. It's interesting when you do a live show, as I'm doing right now, streaming to multiple channels. There's always this idea in the morning. We talk about this a lot in our community. This idea that everything's going to go as planned. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how we have this idea that everything's going to go as planned? As I'm doing right now in the background, what you can't see is that nothing that I had originally planned for this morning is happening. So just bear with me one second as there we go. Let's go like that and like that. Okay. In any case, we are going to just have some fun. Now, what I can tell you is that one of the things that you need to learn how to do is what we call improvise, right? So we're going to do that today with this topic. So in any case, great morning, everybody. It's kind of freeing to allow yourself to move off of your plan. This is an interesting thing that makes this Make Sense Monday concept really cool, is that it's live. And if you're somebody that's open and curious, and we're going to talk about that today. Today is called Walk On. And it's the idea of just making sense of this idea and this strategy of just using this strategy of keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. Great morning, Chris. That's what we're going to talk today. We're going to make sense of that strategy, this idea that, all we really have to do is just keep moving in life. And there's so many things that can get in the way of that. Am I right in saying that? So what's funny about that is that during this live show right now, I'm faced with a technical difficulty where all of the stuff that I was going to deliver to you is no longer visible, right? So what do you do? What do you do in a situation? This is the body of my work is if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And this idea that it's who you are that determines how well what you do works. So look at those two statements right there. We're saying that it's who you are that determines how well what you do works. And then we're saying if you, right? So think about the who behind the you. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So if you struggle to change the way you look at things, that's not a do problem, that's a who problem, right? So if you make a decision that you're going to be open and curious and keep walking on and go with the flow, then you're going to have to recognize when you make a full commitment to that. Great morning, Lori. Great morning, Kathy. When you make a full commitment to this idea, and I train people on this in our private community, this thing called the interface response system. We tackle the adversities and the changes that happen in our life, but we still kind of think that we know a lot about those changes. But what happens when they just completely come out of nowhere, right? If you're truly, truly open and curious to this idea of moving with the times, then everything's got to be disputable. Everything falls into play. So I just want to share that with you because isn't it interesting how You may be in a structure right now where you're feeling like a victim of life, and that's tough, right? You're letting life move you around. But then there's different versions of you, and I'd be curious to know which structure you're in. Some of you might be in contemplation about this idea, like you're not necessarily a victim, but you're a little bit of a victim, but you're trying to reclaim control. But some of you have made like this quality decision to really put the work in and claim control of your reality, which would only be possible if you allowed yourself to look at things from a different vantage point, not always falling prey to looking at things the way you've been programmed to looking at things. So if you're open to looking at things from a different vantage point, then you're in a great structure. Your survival structure, hurricane. Yeah, there you go. All these people, God bless them, are not just experiencing a hurricane, but experiencing what may be perceived as bad luck right now, right? It's like they didn't just have a hurricane. They had a hurricane that created all this destruction. But typically after something like that happens, the world gets behind them and we rally, and then we move into this place where humans say, hey, we learned from it, and we're just, it's so amazing how the community came together and all that stuff. But then you get beat down again. So that's the kind of surprise visit challenge from the universe. You have to be ready for that too, right? You have to be ready for this sequence of events that keep on making you work harder and making you change the way you look at things, and always trying to see the bright side of things, learn from things. But it's very, very difficult, or it becomes progressively increasingly difficult when it happens and it happens and it happens. And I think everybody listening probably has your own version of that, where you start to feel potentially unlucky or cursed or something like that, or doomed. So the moment that you feel cursed, unlucky, or doomed, all that's happened there is you've just made this decision to stop doing the work of looking at things from a different vantage point. Think about that for a second. A lot of people don't, know, some do, that I wear these glasses, but they don't have any lenses in them. And people I wear them out sometimes, and I got to remember to take them off when I'm with my daughter, because I don't want to embarrass her in front of her parents, friends' parents and stuff. But, that happens. But the reason why I do that is just to remind me that with my own eyes, I can change the way I look at things. So these are like magical glasses that just remind me that I choose the way I look at things. So back to my morning here today, I was going to talk about this idea of reframing your mind and looking at challenges and adversity and just using the strategy of just keep moving, right? Just keep moving. There's interesting strategies out there that have sayings like, just keep moving, or just do it, right? Or here, how about the other one? All you have to do to succeed is just show up. So those things make total sense until you've been beaten down enough where you're beaten into submission, and then you start to buy into certain ideas. So if you're with me today and you're ready to make a quality decision to move forward, today I'm starting a 30-day, physical health journey. There's an example of that. So I'm going to eat a certain way. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to refrain from doing a lot of things. So I'm in structure. I've got support. I'm doing it with a community. If anybody wants to do that with me, we're doing that with a whole bunch of people. So it sounds great, right? But if I make a quality decision to do it, I also have to accept all of these other things that don't come from where I'm looking, but come from the side, and surprise me all of a sudden, say, yeah, you didn't know about this. And if that happens in the right sequence and with the right consistency, I also know, and I'm accepting this when I make my decision to keep moving and go no matter what, to make that full body quality decision. I know that there's going to be some very, very interesting ideas behind some of the challenges that are going to come my way that are going to have the power to make me think that I was wrong when I thought that I could do it. I have to be ready for that too. So that's what a full body decision is. So if you're in that place where you're ready to like what you want on the other side of the potentially hard work, because that's why we move into structure. We move into structure and we do things in order to leverage our goal, right? So in the case of health transformation, it would be what you eat, what you drink, what you don't eat and what you don't drink, but then also movement and sleep and all of that stuff that's attached to it. So you move into that structure and say, okay, I know what to do. But as soon as something comes up that makes that harder, and then, like I said, with a sequence of consistency, you know that your brain and your stress response system and your old operating system that you're always trying to evolve and change will get convinced that you can't do it. And then it will start to play this story in your head that maybe it's not the right time. It might even look at your bank account and say, hey, you can't afford this right now. And then it'll come up with this plan to devalidate some of the structure that you decided to do, or you might even use your friends or family that have stressed you out or money problems. You'll create an escape plan. But it all happened the moment that you succumb to these challenges that pop up out of nowhere. So why did I just open up like that? Well, for one thing, I lost all my script of information that I was going to use, which is a good thing, because now you're hearing it just straight from the universe. So welcome. So the idea behind Walk On is really, really interesting. It was based on this story I heard. There's a story of this ancient Buddhist Chinese master. And, it's always fun to hear these stories. I don't know if they're true, but I don't care because they're lessons. I mean, everything that we claim is true was a story that somebody told, right? We don't know if that person knew it was true. But this ancient Buddhist Chinese master is approached by one of his disciples. And the disciples typically would come to their master and ask questions. So this particular disciple asked their master, they said, Master, what is the Tao? Now, when I say Tao, it sounds like D-O-W. It's spelled T-A-U, right? It's not Tao, it's the Tao. But what the Tao means is it's just this universal way of explaining the universal way of life. The governing innate intelligence behind all of this superficial masks that we wear and all of our agendas and our opinions and all that stuff. What's behind all of that stuff is the Chinese, and Buddhism would refer to that as the Tao. So he says, what's the Tao? Meaning, what's the meaning of life? And without any hesitation, the Chinese master leans towards the disciple. And this is what masters typically do. It's like, they don't give you like a whole lot of information, do they? They just tell you like this, right? And he just looks at him and he says, walk on. And that was it. That was his answer. And I want you to just entertain what that means when you're looking at something as profound as the meaning of life. It's one thing to say like, what should I do in this situation? And I say, walk on, keep moving. It reminds me right now of a situation where police officers would, approach like a hostile crowd in like the streets of New Orleans or something like that, and on horses, and say, hey, keep moving, walk on, keep it moving. They would disperse the crowd. And in that sense, I understand, the idea is like, hey, keep moving so we don't have a problem, right? So in the sense of adversity, I get it. But in the sense of being in deep contemplation of something as powerful as what's the meaning of life, to look at this idea of just walk on, keep moving. It's very fascinating to think about that. Is that a valid strategy? So the first thing that I ever do when I look at a strategy is I say, what's the adverse side of that? What's on the other side of that? Now, keep in mind, as a disclaimer, this is Make Sense Mondays. We do this live every Monday at 8 a.m. And we do this daily in our Make Sense Academy, which has got 30 members now, which is growing. And in that environment, we bring up topics like this and we discuss them, but they're all based on this course of my life's work called the Interface Response System, which is a 4-step course to help people change the way they look at things and then become the dominant force and shot caller of their reality. So that's why I'm sharing this idea of walk on with you, is because I'm attempting to arm and equip you with a tool in the form of just a shift in your perspective. Why would I do that? Because that's how you change the way you look at things. So if you're open to changing the way you look at things because you want the things that you look at to change, then this would be something interesting. If you're not open to growth, then you've found the wrong the wrong environment and podcast. So in any case, let's talk about that idea of walk on when you're looking at something as profound as the meaning of life or your purpose in life. Walk on. So I think what the master was saying is that whenever we stop, even in contemplation or in deep thought, that structure is not moving. It's not moving in any direction. And you can look at some of the things that we say, a confused mind, it does nothing. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right? So what I know from my personal experience as a transformational coach, people are frequently approaching me and claiming that they're stuck. And when somebody's stuck, they're in some sort of contemplation. My job, technically, would be to help unstuck them. That's a funny word, is, if you think that you're effed in life, you probably just need to get unstuck, right? So I'm an unstucker, I'm a unstucker. And that's what I help people do, is I help them get unstuck. So the way that I typically do that is I have to just get them back in motion, back to walking on. And my strategy is typically to say, well, rather than looking at where you're at and you're stuck, tell me, where are we going? What is this about? What do you want? Why? And I get them focused once again on their destination, their North Star. And once they are pointed back in that direction, it's very much something that is feasible for them to get back into this idea of saying, like, oh yeah, that's right, I lost track of that. And I say, I know. If you're ever lost in the woods, all you got to do to find your way home is find the North Star, right? So sometimes we lose sight of the North Star, and that's when we come up with this idea that we're stuck and we're contemplating our stuckness, right? What's the meaning of life? What is my purpose? Do I have a purpose anyway? I'm stuck. I'm jammed up. And then I just say, walk on. But the other step is you got to know where you're walking on to, or at least know what you're attempting. What's the desired state and what you're looking to do. So there's a little tip and a little strategy / power move for you today, is if you're stuck, if you're oscillating, even sometimes there's a perception that we're moving, and that is just moving back and forth in a rocking chair. And that's because you're in a structure that's not really set up to have you move forward. It's just set up to make you feel like you're doing something. That's called fake work. But there's also fake work in the mind, where we could be working on something like contemplation of this idea of, putting too much thought to something that doesn't really make sense and being stuck busy doing that. So I think that's what the master was trying to say, is walk on. What I'm almost positive of, now remember, I say all the time, HMMM. And that stands for I haven't made up my mind. I want you to know that I haven't made up my mind about anything. So when I share with you a theory that I have, it's really just something that I'm playing with at this time. I'm open to anything. I always find it funny. Somebody the other day, I put something up, and a lot of people were like, wow, that's profound, and I really like it. And then somebody commented on it, and I don't know who this person was, but they said, I think this is really silly and gay, right? They said that. And my response was, well, then for you, that's what it is. And that's okay, right? We get to decide this stuff. So when I look at this idea of walking on and having a destination, it's based on my knowledge of knowing that we figure things out along the way. We don't figure things out before the way. We figure them out along the way. So that's something that I feel really cool about. So I remember in some of the stuff that I was writing, there's this interesting analogy that I wanted to share with you that you could practice. So the visual would be that of looking at a ping pong ball. And I chose a ping pong ball because it's a very light thing that filled with air. So just imagine if I took a ping pong ball and I threw it in a stream or in a body of water that's moving and it has ripples and it has waves. If you observe the way a ping pong ball reacts to all of that stuff, what you'll find is that the ping pong ball is never overcome by anything. It's moving with the times. Now, the ping pong ball, unlike you, I don't think the ping pong ball, and I said I don't think because I don't know ping pong balls, I've never been one, but I don't think the ping pong ball has the ability to say I'm going this way. But you do. So as long as you know where you're heading, you can just keep moving. And you can do your best, unlike the ping pong ball, to adjust yourself in any way, maybe the structure, the people that you're hanging out with, your mindset, your vantage point, all of these things that I teach in the Make Sense Academy, you have access to those, unlike the ping pong ball, but you can act like the ping pong ball and move with the times, like the hurricane, right? All of that stuff. So I love that analogy because that really helps us do that. So why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you do this? So if you find yourself jammed up right now, just basically listening to this conversation and maybe saying, well, that's not the way I see it, rather than just saying, interesting vantage point, haven't made up my mind about it. I'll think about it. If you're jammed up about it and you're protecting the foundation of what you think, because sometimes when people come and they present something they're pontificating or this idea that they're stuck, and I just give them an exercise that just gets them back in motion and they don't take it, what's that about, right? That's a situation where that person is so indoctrinated and tethered to their belief system, which they got from other people, their mother, their father, their teacher, their preacher, that it won't allow them, which is really them not allowing themselves, to look at something from a different vantage point. Like me saying, hey, all you have to do is know what you want and why, and then just focus on doing things that leverage it rather than figuring everything out. I see this a lot and there's an illusion that people are moving forward very often, but I see this a lot in academics. I just spoke to one the other day that is beginning, I'm mentoring him as a coach and teaching him everything that I know. When somebody gets mentored as a health transformation coach and I'm mentoring them, I'm basically giving them everything that I know so that they could do it as good and better than me. That's what a true leader would do. And then I notice when they go into structure, some people go into action and start failing and learning that way. But there's a great amount of people that think that they have to learn everything before they even go into action. And that's what I refer to once again as fake work. It's this idea of protecting yourself from the overwhelm of success or the perceived potential failure by just making yourself comfortable learning, with this idea of saying one day, if I learn enough, if I know everything, then I'll go. And then what I say to them is I say, do you think that learning from books, this is the problem with the education system, first of all, which is teaching us outdated stuff. This is an interesting thing. Anytime you read something in an educational book, when was that strategy or information created? Not today, not tomorrow, yesterday, or sometimes a long time ago. So you're learning outdated stuff very often. So what's the best way to learn is in the field. And you're not prepared to talk to humans about things because it's not always going to go the same way, right? I cannot come to you on Mondays with the assumption that everything that I usually do is going to work out. It didn't work out today. And it's kind of freeing. It's nice. I don't know if you can sense that, I'm just coming to you organically, present moment time as things are coming into my mind. I find that all humans speak at their highest level of authenticity when they do that. So if somebody is jammed up and they won't do this, that's a decision that they made, because if you're looking at your old way of doing things like pontificating and feeling stuck because things are not making sense according to the way you were taught things should make sense, and that's why you're stuck, or maybe you're just unresolved childhood trauma or whatever, but you're stuck and you're not willing to put on some glasses without lenses on and just say, I'm not sure. I'm going to look at it from different vantage points, including the one of the person that I'm talking to, even if it's completely contradictory to what I've been taught, and see what that looks like, and use words like maybe and things like that. That's the idea of walking on. So the last thing that I want to say is it made me contemplate, there's something called cognitive distancing. And in this interface response system, what I teach people to do is pause. You pause your old program, your old operating system that is looking at things and reacting to things. Remember, that's the only thing that you control, how you respond to things, not the things. So if your old system is faulty, and that's part of the problem, we teach people to pause the old system. So I started to wonder, I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that me stopping my forward motion when I pause and look at things from a different vantage point? Because this topic made me wonder, is that a bad thing to stop and pause if we just keep moving and fail forward and all that stuff? But then I realized that the value, another extreme value in pausing your old operating system and looking at things from a different vantage point, falls under this idea of walking in somebody else's shoes. Keyword walking. So what's interesting about allowing yourself in this idea of walk on and just keep it moving, what's interesting about allowing yourself to walk in somebody else's shoes, choose another vantage point, look at things from a different direction, and they could be another pair of your shoes that you haven't worn in a while, right? Or getting some new shoes. It is still forward motion. It actually is preventing you from being stuck, because if you're looking at things the way you've always looked at them and it's not working, that's the definition of insanity. That's the oscillating pattern. That's the not moving on. But if you walk in somebody else's shoes, not only are you moving on, but you're moving on from a different vantage point. So what that did for me is that made me say, I love it even more. I love it even more. So whenever somebody criticizes me or challenges anything that I say, I remember somebody the other day said, "Who the hell are you to talk about that stuff?" And my response was, And I actually gave myself time to think about that. And I didn't embrace it, because I think that I'm moving in the direction that I want to go, and it feels right and all that stuff. But I absorbed his vantage point, and I said to him, "I see what you mean." Right? So I didn't say you're right, but I said, "I see what you mean." So always moving, always moving. Even if you stop and think about something, as long as you're doing it in a different perspective, it's forward motion. The danger today would be if you just give the keys of trust to your old programming and let it just take you away. Like the riptides, and all of a sudden you find out you're once again offshore and you've wasted more of this precious, unpredictable time. So love and appreciate you all. I hope you enjoyed this is going to be in the Make Sense podcast. This is going to be on our YouTube channel, and probably show up in my Instagram at Dr. JC Doornick. So I just want to say, I wish you all just a miraculous day. I wish you the courage and strength to allow yourself to look at things from a different vantage point, not just the one that you feel most comfortable and safe with. I wish you the courage and strength today to not make your mind up about anything and make statements today that potentially were made up by somebody else, but you put an exclamation point behind them. I wish you the strength and courage to replace the exclamation point with a question mark, today and ask questions. And also, I wish you the strength to every so often today, celebrate what actually is in your life. Express gratitude in the present moment today because everything that you've worked on in the past is happening right now. And if you're caught up working on something else and moving forward again, you might have forgot to celebrate what actually is right now. Stop and smell the roses. Go for a walk outside. Put your feet in some grass. Life is beautiful. Life is beautiful. And so are you. So have a wonderful day. And I love and appreciate you. I'll see you next time.